Spooky Tuesday.
All day long, I've been seeing that guy's weird face and hearing those fingernails.
Fingernails? That's amazing you saying that. That made me remember the dream I had last night.
What'd you dream?
I dreamed about a guy in a dirty red and green sweater.
Hey guys, welcome back to Spooky Tuesday, a weekly podcast where we're breaking down all of our favorite slashers, thrillers, monster movies, and black comedies on the new scariest day of the week. I'm Sydney Thompson.
I'm Monica Height.
And I'm Chelsea Duff.
And this week we are talking about one of the big bads of the horror genre, the Nightmare himself, A Nightmare Not Before Christmas, A Nightmare on Elm Street, 1984.
Yeah, I think I said on our last episode when we were introducing this movie that I had seen it all by cultural osmosis. That, as it turns out, was a lie, because at no point did I know what was going to happen in this movie. Honestly, I didn't even recognize Johnny Depp as Johnny Depp until halfway in, even though you guys had told me that Johnny Depp was in this movie. And I didn't know who the main character was, I thought our entry point character was our main character. Every turn was totally fresh for me. I just knew who Freddy was, I guess, and that there was a bathtub scene. But I loved it. I thought it was great.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. If it makes you feel any better, Adam, my boyfriend, has watched this movie 2 times all the way through now, and only after 2 days after the second viewing, when I was talking about Johnny Depp's character being pointless, which I will get into later, he was like, Johnny Depp's character? And I was like, sir, you have watched this film twice. And still, he had no idea that was Johnny Depp. I don't
Frankly,
understand.
If you guys hadn't told me, I don't know that I would have put it together while I was watching the movie either. It was just at one point that I was like, wait a second, but only because I knew that he was in the movie. If I didn't know, I don't know that I would have made the connection. And it's not because he doesn't look like himself exactly, but this is his first film role. He was such a baby in this movie.
He's an infant. He's truly an infant, and also maybe you were thrown off by his whisper of a unibrow that he has in this. That is something that he did not continue and take with him into the 90s and later films he was in. But I personally thought it was sexy, even though Glenn is the most annoying person that I've seen recently. He's still
fair
sexy.
enough. I will just say, I just looked at my notes, and just to give myself a little bit of credit, I did recognize that it was Johnny Depp during a Tina scene. So it was not as far in the movie as I thought it was.
It could have been Tina's corpse. That scene.
That's true. But I'm looking at my notes, and I know which Tina scene it was.
Yeah, well, at least it didn't take you 2 viewings, since you still didn't get it then. So, you're doing great. You're doing great.
Thank you.
But yeah, I mean, this movie, it's got one of the big 3, right? It's got Freddy Krueger. And I love it so much because when you watch one of the movies from the big 3, at least for me, I there was all these expectations. I hadn't watched any of the classic horror movies because I was a little sissy baby, and my parents did hate horror so much, so that was not on the table. I remember my cousin Kiki, she used to watch scary movies, and I thought she was so cool. She's 2 years younger than me, and she watched them all the time. And then one time we watched A Nightmare Before Christmas together, and I was so scared that I had to leave the room. So was not prepared. Truly not prepared. And I'm sad that I missed out on that opportunity to see this as a child, because as I was speaking with my therapist yesterday, she told me that watching A Nightmare on Elm Street as a child, it's fucking terrifying.
Yes. That's what I was saying to you guys the other day. I really, really enjoyed watching this movie, but I wasn't scared. But I think if I had watched it when I was a child, or if I had been 28 in the 80s when this came out, this I think would have been like one of the scariest movies I'd ever seen.
It would have been so scary. Like a lot of the stuff obviously doesn't hold up today. It's still a great time, but if you've never seen something like this before, it has to be just like, oh my god.
Yeah.
Terrifying.
I think the practical effects of it all, some of them were extremely new at the time. You know what I mean? Like some of them were like innovative at the time, essentially. And so you can't compare our effects now to the effects then, because our effects now are completely different, and you can make something look real in a way that you could only kind of approximate back then, but it was like realer than it had ever looked in a movie before. And so I think like when Freddy has his long gangly arms in the beginning, you know what I mean? It looks very silly to us now because it is frankly silly, but also because it could only be achieved by like the actor holding fishing poles or whatever, you know what I mean? So it's like not something you've got like great muscle control over, whereas like digitally speaking, you can take someone's actual arms doing the precise movements that they mean them to do and then just make them long. But nobody could ever make it look like, not never, but maybe in the 80s it was like you'd never seen someone with long arms like this. I don't know.
I'm just imagining like a child in the 80s being like, no one's arms should be that long. But also I would like to say that Annabelle creation, when Annabelle gets tall, is a clear reference to this film.
Yes,
it is a clear reference.
And frankly, like we said, tall Annabelle, best part of that movie. So I mean,
and that's
arguably Long Arm Freddy is one of the highlights of this movie. But
it's right out the gate.
If you've never seen this movie, please go see it. You will have a great time. But it is basically a monstrous spirit of a slain child murderer seeks revenge by invading the dreams of teenagers whose parents were responsible for his untimely death. Also, it takes place in Ohio, which I have issues
No, it
with.
doesn't. I dispute this.
So I was watching this movie in my house in which I live. It's the house that I live in. I live in this house. And I was watching the movie in the house that I live in on the TV, and the TV is inside of the house, and I live in that house. But I was looking at the TV, and I was watching the movie, and then on the TV, my house was on the TV, but I was in my house. The house that I live in was on the TV, and I was in the house, and I was watching it on the TV. All that's to say is that my house is in this movie in like one of the opening shots. I was high when I watched this. Oh my god. Yeah, I was high when I watched this, and I was like, for a second, I was like, if my house is in the movie and I'm in my house, am I in the movie? And is Freddy gonna come into my dreams tonight? And he did not. So we're good. It was fine, but it was truly terrifying. Also, I found out that my house used to be a different color than it currently is. And the current color is better. So there you go. Educational experience all around.
Anyway, what's the real takeaway there is Freddy hasn't come into your dreams yet.
Fuck.
Yet. Because what I learned from this movie is that he is not necessarily an equal opportunity dream invader. And I would like to discuss that further once we get further into the movie and the plot, instead of like skipping and hopping around Freddy's long arms. But he first starts with Tina. Tina is our entry point character. And if you've seen this movie and you already know where this is going, and probably most people have, because this is like such a classic, but I didn't. And so I will say, if you haven't seen this movie, I totally recommend that you just engage with it fully with no knowledge, because it was a blast. So that was your moment to opt out if you were going to. But now I'm gonna start talking about the plot, and so it will naturally reveal the plot.
As I discuss the plot, it will also reveal the plot.
Because I'm not skipping to the end yet, but I'm talking about something that was a spoiler to me, which is I thought Tina was gonna be our main character. You know what I mean? I didn't realize that Casey in Scream was Tina, essentially. You know what I mean? I didn't realize when I was watching this movie. I didn't watch a trailer for it or anything. So I saw her as the entry point character. I thought we were gonna stay with her, and then when she was getting got, I was like, wait a second. If does she really die here? Like, that's it for Tina, and we don't see her again. And obviously, we did see her again, but not in a nice, alive way.
In a body bag.
Yes, but I was so mad. Because I had. Before I knew that Tina was supposed to be 15, and she's played by like a 23-year-old, so it's still fine. But before I knew that, I was like, Tina's so great. I love Tina. She's so wonderful. She's just chilling. She's got these sassy lines. And I wrote
Beautiful
in my notes.
Nightgown.
Yeah, I wrote in my notes, if Tina really dies this early, I will riot. And then 1 second later, I was like, wait, Tina's really dead? And I have to live with this for the rest of this movie?
I'm so sorry that happened to you. I'm curious because we know Wes Craven did both this and Scream. Did they do the same marketing ploy? Like, was the actress that played Tina way more famous than everybody else, and then they axed her? Like, is it the same? Was it the same gimmick completely, or not? Probably. That would be
think
lot.
so. Because I don't know, but I think they were all kind of like the same level. I think they were all kind of like fresh-faced actors.
Yeah.
Well, I can tell you, looking at the poster, it shows a brunette, but it's not clearly any of the characters to me.
I don't
like
think
it's not
that's
clearly
anybody.
meant to be Nancy, in my opinion. Maybe it is. Because I'm looking at another poster now, and she has kind of curly bangs, which Nancy does have. But to me, it wasn't.
Like her to me.
Yeah. And then there's another poster that's not like a traditional movie poster, but like promotional material that does feature Tina. So I'm not sure how this was advertised. I didn't watch a trailer, like I said. So I was just going based off of like what was in the movie. I didn't realize we were pulling a Psycho. I didn't realize Scream was going to be in direct conversation with this film. You know what I mean? Like, obviously I know Wes Craven loves to be referential to his own work, and he loves to have a lot of similar things that he carries through. I just didn't know that was one of it for this movie, and then it broke my heart a little bit when she was gone. Not that I didn't love Nancy, because I absolutely stand for Nancy so fucking hard after watching this movie. I think she is incredible. I think she's so smart. I think she had a hot boyfriend, even if he was not very good at doing anything she asked of him.
At all.
Not one single thing that she asked of him.
He's good at wearing crop tops, and he's good at wearing sweater vests, and that's something, but it's not
the crop
much.
tops especially. But yeah, I think
so good.
Yes, I think she was very smart and good on her feet, but also good at coming up with a plan in advance. I think like all around she was iconic. That said, I wanted more Tina.
I know. She did look good in that body bag, though.
She did. Nancy,
Very
for how
spooky.
smart she is also very boring of a character.
I agree.
Like,
I wasn't
like I didn't have the same attachment to her as I do with other, main girls.
Yeah.
She's so smart. She's so competent. She really thinks things through. But I can say that with the entire cast, really.
I mean, there are some characters that I was attracted to physically, but I did not like fall in love like that's my new best friend for any of them. I mean, I feel like Tina had the most personality out of it. I feel like Tina and Rod were like the personality hotspots, and then you didn't really get that much from Nancy. I will say though that we should look into this, but was the term getting lost in her eyes. Did that come from Nancy's eyes? Because I swear to God, I've never seen eyes that blue and that vibrant and that insane. And I was just like, whoa, while I was watching it. Like, absolutely dreamy, very dreamy eyes, 10 out of 10. Great hair, great. That weird type of curly hair that was in the 80s where you, I guess, tried to make it straight, but it was still really fluffy. I loved it. Beautiful.
The hair in this movie is so out of control. Like,
It's
in the
gorgeous.
best way, though.
Oh, yeah. Very, very gorgeous. But, okay, so just to dive a little deeper into the actual death of Tina, I mean, we've got the long arms. We've discussed the long arms, which is absolutely unhinged.
Important.
Another very wonderful part is how he runs, where he throws his knife hand into the sky and shakes it above his head and kind of like sachets almost. It's really an interesting
Sashay
move.
away, Freddy.
Seriously. And that's something that I want to say about Freddy in general. Like with the big three, right? Like Michael, Jason, Freddy. Like Michael, Jason, stoic, scary, tall, mask men. Freddy, absolute freak. Absolute freak. Like he has fun with it. Like I'm sure they all have fun with it because they're psychopaths and they love to kill, and that's like their whole thing. But like Freddy, you can see the joy on his face, and he does all these crazy dream gimmick things. Like, for example, immediately after the long arms, where he's like, I think this is in the Tina part. I get a little confused with the dream sequences where he throws up his hand and he's like, hey, look at this. And he just starts cutting off his fingers.
Yes.
That is
I really
Tina.
liked that. Oh, that was Tina. Okay, good. Just absolutely unnecessary freak shit. And I love that for him. Good for him. I also like that it squirts out green goo. That's so cool too. Good for him. That's exciting. He's got his whole thing down and he's having fun with it. And we love to see that.
Yeah, I mean, he brings an absolutely unparalleled amount of drama to his kills, and he loves some theatrics, you know what I mean? And I love that for him, and I love it for us, but it is so funny sometimes where, like, I don't know, I think Tina said something like, oh God, and Freddie was like, this is God. He just like absolutely
Referring to
cannot
his
be
knife hand.
yeah, it's like he's just absolutely wild and crazy and is relishing in every single moment. You know what I mean? He brings so much joy to his role, you know, not just the actor, but you can tell Freddie really is here for a good time, and I think that's a lot of fun. And I don't know if I support him necessarily, because again, there are a lot of characters in here that I'm rooting for, and I don't know that I want them to get got, but I love a creative kill, and he brings it.
Oh, he really brings it.
But so do you want to know who else is fucking dramatic in this movie? Rod and Tina when they are fucking.
Oh my
because
God.
I'm sorry.
And they sound like they're really good at it for being 15 years old, which I don't think is right or fair or appropriate for me to be a part of, frankly.
I feel
Or
like
they
they're
sound
not
like
good
they're
at it.
really bad at it. And
They're like, this
just,
is
like,
what sex is, right?
exaggerating.
You're supposed to be moaning.
Ah!
I've heard about porn, you guys, and I know that you're supposed to moan. And it's just like, Tina,
But
babe.
like they're not even moaning, they're like screaming at each other.
It was scary. It was like
it
was like bobcats when two bobcats meet and they fight. Look this up. Look up bobcat fight. It sounds the exact same. Literally, it does. It's like a human scream.
What
That's
was
what they
really
sounded
upsetting for me, that aside, what was really upsetting for me about that scene is also that, like, the Rod Tina dynamic previously had been not clear to me. Like, when we first see Rod, he shows up, and I guess what I am putting together in hindsight is that they are legit a couple, but they had some fight, or maybe they had broken up and then they like get back together. But I don't think that intention really made it into the beginning of the movie, I thought he was just like some random perv, essentially. You know what I mean? And then it doesn't help
Give
that
off
maybe
that
this is
vibe.
my own like 80s movie bias or whatever. He's wearing a leather jacket. I was like, oh, he's a bully.
No, he's just sexy, Chelsea.
I mean, I'm not
Oh,
saying they
he's a
can't be.
sexy bully.
I'm
He's a
just saying
sexy bully.
he showed up and he was like, I had a hard on for you this morning. And I was like, ew, this guy is a perv. He's just there to be like a predator. But then he kept showing up and I was like, no, it's getting worse. But then Tina started being giggly. And I was like, wait, does Tina
Oh.
actually like him? Or is this just like weird 80s? They hadn't unpacked this yet. You know what I mean? Like, I couldn't tell. I was like, does she like him and that's why she is laughing? Or is this like a 2021 style, you laugh because you're uncomfortable and
Comfortable?
because you don't know how else to react, and that's why she's like, don't leave me here alone with him. Like, I was
Yeah.
ready to believe her that she was being serious, and then all of a sudden they were fucking in her mom's bed, and I was like, wait, what? What's going on here?
I also forgot that they, like, Tina and Nancy are supposed to be 15.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Horrifying.
I was just like,
Nightmare.
you know, like, they're seniors or something. Like,
Uh-huh.
they're 17 or 18. And then I was like, oh, God, I forgot they were, like, freshmen. Like, and
They're
they're just
newborns.
like,
babies.
no, they're tiny babies. It just makes it
just-
worse.
Yes, I think when you have a high school property like this, if it's a TV show, they usually leave their ages and grades ambiguous. And then, you know, in like season 2 or something, they'll be like, they're 15 so that we can stay in high school for 4 more years. But when it's a movie like this, I mean, I guess they left it open for a sequel at the end on purpose, but also considering where all of the characters stand at the end of this movie, that they're not necessarily going to be the same characters that we return to in a sequel. Can we please just make them not 15? You know what I mean? Especially if we're going to get such a horny sex scene with them.
Oh my God, the sex scene was so outrageously horny.
It was
And
so
it's even funny
outrageous.
too, because Glenn, I forgot his name for a while. He's that useless in this movie. Before we get this like outrageous sex scene, he was definitely wanting to hook up with Nancy, and they, you know, Nancy was staying over with Tina because her mom was out of town, and she was having these bad dreams, and he just hears them fucking, and he just says, "Morality sucks."
Great line. A wonderful
Great
line. Maybe his only good line. The whole movie.
No, he's got one other line that we'll talk about later.
Okay.
That's amazing.
But okay,
I don't know. I just felt like Tina transformed into a whole different character before our eyes in that moment, and I didn't get it. And then all of a sudden she's being like, "Jungle Man, fix Jane" after they did sex, and I was just like, well, I don't quite understand the dynamic here, but I am suspending all disbelief. Fine, they're in love, or maybe she's just horny. Maybe she's just horny, and you know what? She should be allowed to be. Other than the fact that she's 15. She should be allowed to just shamelessly. 15-year-olds are horny. I am not going to come on here and be like,
very horny.
Yes, but I don't want to be promoting 15-year-olds having sex with sexual perverts. Which Rod is, no matter what. You know what I mean? Whatever. I mean, I guess
Chelsea,
the dynamics.
Doesn't make him a sexual pervert.
Yeah,
leather jacket, Sydney. He's a bad boy.
He's just a bad boy. He could also be a 15-year-old bad boy with beautiful hair, beautiful eyes, beautiful eyelashes, a sexy earring.
I know.
What more could you want? Except for maybe boundaries. I think boundaries actually is the thing that we could want. Not
I know that
arriving at the home unannounced.
15-year-olds have had sex and do have sex and will continue to have sex probably. I didn't at the age of 15. Maybe that's why it's particularly horrifying to me. I didn't even kiss anybody until I was 16. I just, you know, I'm sexual liberation or whatever, but also Tina is baby.
Okay.
Tina is baby.
Is all I'm
Well,
saying.
she's baby, then she is no longer baby, and then she's fucking dead right after
Yes.
this experience.
It's also like the classic horror trope in movies, like you have sex, you die.
Yeah.
So that's like truly, it's like solidifying this horror trope
Yeah,
for an entire genre.
100%. And also, I have to say that say what you want about Rod and whatever. I don't know. I don't find him to be a sexual pervert, but whatever.
My
you gotta
viewing
say,
is so unbelievably colored by the fact that his first line was, "Hey, I have a boner for you."
yeah. But he gives off fucking. We were talking about this before. He gives off like Stu from
Yes.
Scream energies in
Yeah.
that moment where he says something inappropriate. He's a high school boy. That's not an excuse, but it is part of the game.
Yeah,
with
if
him.
I had known that was her boyfriend or her ex-boyfriend when he walked up saying, "I had a hard on for you this morning," I would have viewed that line entirely differently. The setup for that for me was just not there, and it made me like very not chill with him. And
Yeah.
until we got to the Jungle Man fix Jane line, and then I was like, whatever, I guess she likes him and I'm happy for her. Like,
And
I
I
want
also
Tina to get whatever
related-
she wants.
I related to that too because I also have a Tarzan thing. Yeah. I'm like really into Tarzan. I feel also of all the like Disney princess adjacent women, I relate to her the most too. So I was like, yeah, Tarzan.
Okay,
But
Monica,
anyway.
I definitely need you to repeat this line to Adam at some point.
Oh, yeah. He used to have long hair, not anymore. It's very unfortunate. But anyway, moving on from that, regardless of what you think about Rod, no one deserves to have their bleeding girlfriend's body whack them in the face and almost knock them unconscious. Like that.
That is
that
true.
was
I had sympathy after
hilarious
Jungle Man
moment.
fixed Jane. I had sympathy for Rod.
Good, because like she's just spinning around in the sky. He's like, "What the fuck?" And then she hits him in the face. Oh, poor guy. He just really.
Oh, why
has
he's in
a
his
sad
tidy
plight.
whities.
Oh, he's in his tidy whities, and she just gets ripped apart, and it's absolutely terrible.
One of the best shots in this whole movie is when Tina in the dream world is being attacked by Freddy,
Mm-hmm.
and we see Rod and he's laying in the bed, but then we see Freddy and Tina like under the covers of this same bed, and then Rod rips the covers off and it's just Tina, and then she gets slashed open.
I mean, let's not gloss over the part where she was like writhing on the ceiling, and they filmed it by
Oh
like
my God.
literally rotating the whole set upside down. You know what I mean?
So amazing.
There's so much fake blood in this movie,
Ah,
and
Finally.
it truly
Comes
did
through for
something
you.
for me, guys.
Mhm.
I was like, yeah, baby, like this is what I want.
Also, something that can't go without mentioning is the not curved but slanted ceiling. Like while all this shit's going on with Tina, Nancy's asleep in the adjoining room, and there's like a slanted ceiling. And at one point, like Freddy tries to come down to get her like through the wall, and the wall is like stretchy, and his like you can see his claw like coming through the wall. And I absolutely loved that scene. I think that was really creative. And also another Conjuring steal that I think is a clear reference to this movie. I don't know if y'all have seen the trailer for the new Conjuring movie coming out. I watched it because I watch every horror trailer that comes out, and there's a part with a child laying on a waterbed, and hands come up like through the stretchy material of the waterbed. A clear reference to that scene. A clear reference. It's very clear. But shockingly, there are other kills and things that happen in this film than this first part. So I guess we have to move on to those.
But I will say though, Tina's death is the best death in this whole movie.
Definitely.
I don't think Glenn's role in Glenn's death is particularly iconic, but I think the geyser of blood from Glenn's death scene is incomparable, and I want to give that all the shine that it deserves.
Oh, yeah.
Because it is truly next level. IMDb said something like 500 gallons of fake blood were used in this movie, they had to have used 400 gallons of it in that scene alone. You know what I mean?
Seriously. It was truly a geyser. It was beautiful. I just feel like with the lead up, and because that's the thing about Glenn's death, I loved it, but like Glenn, it lacked depth.
Yes.
Like because like he's just asleep and then
It
he gets
lacks
sucked into the
depth.
bed and he explode. So
Honestly-
it lacked depth. Oh, I heard that, Sydney. Good job. I'm proud of you. She said it lacked depth.
Ah! I was like, what are you talking about? I still don't get it.
Pun
I do
genius.
get it now, and it is great, and I commend you. Oh, but that aside, one thing that I sort of referenced earlier, just like vaguely touched on, which is that I just don't think Freddie like gave one fuck about Glenn in this movie. You know what I mean? Like he is not invested in the same characters that we are exactly. I mean, I feel like Glenn was only there because he was Nancy's boyfriend. Glenn didn't even seem to have any dreams or whatever, any nightmares, unless he had them, because he does get asked the question that he never responds to, which is like, did you have a scary dream?
Mm-hmm.
But we know Tina obviously had Freddy dreams. We know Nancy obviously had Freddy dreams. Rod says that he had a Freddy dream. We never hear that from Glenn, and Freddy does not seem to give one fuck about him until like Nancy explicitly is like, you're next. Glenn, I'm gonna save you. Like it almost feels that death scene was only to get at Nancy.
So this is a big part of the movie, so big spoiler, but you should have left already. I mean, the reason it seems that Freddy is going after these kids is because the big reveal is when what's her name? Nancy's mom's name? Marge. Marge reveals that Freddy was a little child murderer back in the day, and he got off. Like they caught him, but he got off somehow on a technicality.
Yes, they say something like somebody didn't sign the warrant in the right place.
So he was free to roam, and so all of the parents in the neighborhood teamed up to make a murder gang, and they hunted Freddy down, and they cornered him in a house, and they burnt the house down and burned him alive. And to this day, Marge, our girl, keeps his claw hand in their basement. So she always remembers. And then of course she's subsequently haunted by the fact that she committed murder, and then they allude to the fact that she's an alcoholic, which was super sad part of this. But
yeah. Oh yeah.
One thing that I want to note was, how long ago did all these parents murder Freddy?
Okay, that's actually super interesting because the IMDb trivia kind of touched on this a little bit. It didn't make it into the final cut. So it's one of those things where it's like, if it was only the intention and it's not actually part of the movie, is it canon, whatever, blah, blah, blah. But the original script, before it got like trimmed down, or maybe they filmed this and then it got cut, I don't know. But there's supposed to be a scene of Marge basically breaking it down for Nancy, that like Nancy's an only child, Tina was an only child, Glenn was an only child, Rod was an only child, but that was not always the case. Like their parents had other children, and those children were like some of Freddy's victims, and that's why they were like, we must take justice into our own hands, and that's why they were so like, yes, I will watch this man burn to death. You know what I mean? That's why they absolutely,
oh my God.
yeah, which is wild and insane. And it makes sense because also the original like script for that scene, or the original intention for that scene was that Freddy didn't die when they lit him on fire, kind of like later in the movie when he like still is running around the house on fire. But originally the plan was that Freddy didn't die right away, and Marge shot him with a gun to make sure that he was dead. So that would also explain why like Marge specifically is being pulled into this. You know what I mean? Other than obviously Marge is struggling with her demons, and also Marge is Nancy's mom, and also Marge
Well,
is the one
that
who
is
kept a
probably why-
souvenir with
Yeah.
the glove. Yeah, but it's like,
But that's probably why he's going after Nancy.
yes. Oh,
and,
yeah.
like fixating over Nancy.
Seems
And
like
so
Marge is was the ringleader of the parent murder gang.
Or at least the one who pulled the trigger in the original plan.
Yeah.
But that makes me wonder, like, were Glenn's parents not part of that? You know what I mean?
Exactly.
Like,
That's
did
why
they
I
not
brought
live
this
there at the
up.
time? Glenn was their only child? They just, like, weren't part of the whole vigilante justice, and that's why he was like, Glenn who? Until Glenn got, like, pulled into it in a way that Freddie was, like, not able to overlook, or he realized he had an opportunity, basically, to, like, be torturing Nancy. But I have to wonder if they were just, like, not part of it. And they also did not seem to be taking the whole everyone's getting murdered thing seriously. You know what I mean? They were just
Glenn's
like,
parents,
Nancy's
you mean?
crazy. Yeah, Glenn's
Yeah.
parents were just like, Nancy's crazy and keep her away from our son. At no point were they like, oh, yes, our son Glenn also essentially witnessed a murder. 2 murders, really, because Rod, too. Although, obviously, everybody thinks that's a suicide.
And they think that Rod killed Tina.
Yes, and that
so
made me
there's
sad.
definitely less sympathy for Rod, who is
That made me really
victim.
sad.
An innocent.
An innocent pervert.
He's not a pervert. Okay, well.
Speaking of perverts, in the movie, Freddie is a child murderer, but he was supposed to be a child molester
and murderer. I think it was going to be like a
double whammy.
But they made it, and for whatever reason, I always thought he was a child molester.
Because he
maybe
is
in the
a
later
pervert.
movies,
he gives off pervy vibes. Like, forget about Rod. Freddie is so pervy.
Yes, but there was they changed it because there was a big case in California at the time they did it, and they didn't want everything to be kind of muddled with the Freddie being a child molester. So they'd be like, child murder, let's go with that.
We'll just keep it at murder. That's way better. Still very bad.
So dark.
I was gonna say something that I want to discuss, and we're jumping around, but before
welcome
Rod
to the podcast.
Welcome to the podcast. Welcome to Spooky Tuesday. This is a weekly podcast where we jump around all the time, and it doesn't make a lot of sense.
Where we always stay on topic.
Stay on your toes, okay? This is making your mind nimble. You're welcome. Forget Sudoku. Listen to our podcast and try to figure out what the fuck we're talking about. That's your brain teaser for the week. But anyway, I really like the idea. Like, there's one dream sequence where I think it's the one where Glenn is first supposed to be watching over Nancy, and then he absolutely fucks her and falls asleep because he's a worthless piece of trash who's very sexy. He's a himbo in true in essence. Can't do nothing but look cute for me. But anyway, Nancy is out and about, and she goes to like spy on Rod, or she somehow gets to the police station in her dreamscape. And she sees Freddie going after Rod and sees him like starting to like do the thing where he
ties the sheet into a noose.
Yeah, ties the sheet into a noose and hangs him, which was very, very sad.
Very Jeffrey Epstein.
Oh, stop bringing predators into this.
No.
Sorry, they all remind me of fucking Freddie.
Oh God, dear Christ. But the reason I bring that up was not to get to that scary reference, but was to say that I like the idea that if you're asleep at the same time, I feel like you can like meet up in the dream world. Like if Rod, like I feel like Rod and Nancy could have like met up and like done something. And so that makes me excited because they don't really do anything with that in this movie. But I'm excited for subsequent films because there's so much shit that they can do. And I've only seen this Nightmare on Elm Street, and there's like 27 of them. That's not true, but there's close to that.
And I want to see the next one.
So there's this movie. There is 6 sequels, a remake, a crossover with Jason, and there was a TV series from 1988 to 1990.
That is an insane amount. I will watch some of those.
But yeah, I mean, the implications of the dream world are really interesting here. It's a little hard to parse sometimes, and I think that's part of the fun, to be like, I'm not sure if we're watching reality or the dream world exactly. And I think you're right. It's super interesting that Nancy, in her own way, is like in Rod's dream, or Rod, she's seeing the reality, but like through her dream vision. But another
Yeah.
thing that they did in that moment was when Nancy leaves her house, we find out later she's still asleep in her bed essentially, but she's like walking over to the police station, but she turns around at one point and is like, Glenn, are you still watching? And Glenn just like pops out from behind a hedge and he's like, I'm here. And so now that raises the question, like, had Glenn fallen asleep by that point already, and that's how he was able to do that? Or is Glenn
Useless. He falls asleep
yeah,
minute one.
that is how it seems based on like the implications of this with Rod, you know what I mean? But also it's a dream, so it's possible that it's just like Nancy reassuring herself with a projection of Glenn. I don't know. I'm not going to get too far into that because that's a whole other possibility. But I think it's really interesting the way that dreams function in this movie in a way that really leans into the plot and also contributes like a really interesting plot point and discussion to the end of the movie, which I don't want to touch on just yet.
Yeah, this is a brilliant concept for a movie because they can literally do anything they fucking want with it in any of the sequels. They can go anywhere because in your dreams you can go anywhere. And so these dreams that they were having were based on their physical location, but like I don't think that it has to necessarily be that.
And it has a little bit of magic to it because we learn from Marge when she's telling the like Freddy child murderer vigilante justice origin story. She says to them, a bunch of us parents tracked him down after they let him out. We found him in an old abandoned boiler room where he used to take his kids. So the boiler room that we keep seeing throughout the movie isn't really in the precinct at the jail. It isn't really in the basement of the school. It isn't really connected to Nancy's basement at her house. You know what I mean? That's part of the dream logic, that it can kind of just pop up wherever it needs to be. So they do play with that a little bit here.
I also love how they use like his iconic coloring. Like Freddy has the iconic Freddy sweater, right? And they have him pop up in different places but looking like different things. Like for example, when Nancy falls asleep in her class. And let me just say that dream sequence is so brilliant because like there's that weird geeky kid who goes up to read in front of the entire class and she falls asleep while he's talking, and he's like dream version of him, it starts saying like stuff in really hushed tones and in a really weird voice. And I thought that was a brilliant ad. And then also there's a hall monitor. Oh yeah.
I wrote that line down. I think this is the line, but it says something like, "Oh God, I could be bounded in a nutshell and count myself a king of infinite space were it not that I have bad dreams." Like absolutely spooky vibes.
So spooky. And he said bad dreams. Like he says it so fucking weird. Overacting, but we
My
love
notes
him.
for him were, God, he also has great hair.
Man, what were men doing in the 80s where their hair like stood up so high? Is it a lot of hairspray? Are they like doing the upside down hair dryer thing? Whatever it is, someone let me know and I'll make Adam do it.
I think we should bring 80s crop tops and big floofy hair back, baby.
They are back. They're
back. They're coming back.
They're not back enough. Like they're not mainstream enough.
I need to see every man wearing a crop top.
And short shorts and floofy hair, baby. Like, that's what I want. That's what I need.
Not just TikTok boys. Boys in real life.
I'm influencing
I need
Adam
like
quite a bit.
30-year-old men doing it. Like, I don't want 20-year-old men doing it. I need like 35-year-old men doing it.
Well, Adam's 28 and he wears short shorts on the daily, which has been a really great pandemic change, but no crop tops yet. But his hair does have a rather floofy look to it these days. So I'm doing the work, ladies. I'm
Cut
doing
his
what I
shirts.
can. Oh my God.
Yeah,
you're so
just
bad.
start cutting all of his shirts.
Cut
even his
every shirt he
button-downs.
has.
Cut 'em. All of
No,
them.
you have to wear a crop top. Oh yeah. So another part of that dream sequence is there's a hall monitor and she's
Mhm.
wearing the sweater and has the spooky hand and I love that too. And then again at the end, which I don't think we want to get to as well, there's another like color pattern reference that lets you know that things aren't as it seems. But yeah, like I like that you can't tell if it's reality or a dreamscape a lot of the time, and there's just a little hint to let you know that something's amiss.
I like own this movie, and I
Mhm.
was watching some of the like, behind the scenes thing,
Ooh.
like
Ooh,
of
tell
Wes
us.
I
Craven,
miss
like talking
those.
about it, and they were saying that they were having a hard time to find a studio that would make this film because a lot of people didn't think that people would get the dream space versus real life. They thought that would be like too confusing for people to actually follow. And like sometimes it is, especially with the ending. But I think that's what makes it
Yeah.
scarier. Like you don't
Totally.
know where you are.
I
Mhm.
totally agree. Like that's like what makes it so good is that you have no idea, at least for the first like minute of each sequence, if it's a real thing or a fake thing. And even if like I say fake thing, but the dreamscape is real enough to kill you, so like it's real
Yeah.
too.
Yeah, I mean, I just think Nancy's the first one who really starts to get it. You know what I mean? And even
Yeah.
when there starts to be what should be undeniable proof that this is a real phenomenon that they're experiencing, other people are not getting on board. And as it turns out, the reason Marge is refusing to get on board is because of like her own trauma, essentially. You know what I mean? But Nancy goes to this sleep disorder clinic where she's doing like a sleep study and they're observing her. And the doctor at one point, as her levels are spiking, they've never been this high or whatever, he's
They're
like,
supposed to
I
be at
don't know
5 and
what's
they're
happening.
like 40.
Yes, the mom is like, is she dreaming? And the doctor's like, I don't know. But cut to Nancy, and she wakes up having like pulled Freddy's hat out of the dream with her, and now she has a white streak in her hair. Iconic, by the way. And
Iconic.
she's
I
got
have
like
a very
so good.
similar gray area in my hair in the same spot, and I'm like, wow. Now
so
she's
maybe
making
Freddy
it
has been
cool.
in your dreams already.
Ah.
Anyway,
He saw my house so he could come into my house.
yes, in your house where you live.
My house where I live, where my TV is, where I watch the movie.
In which there is the house that you live. Wow. Anyway, but yeah, I mean, they put Nancy to bed in this room. They know she did not go in with a hat under the covers with her. They know there is conceivably nothing in there that could have created a wound on her arm or turned her hair white. Like this should be the point in the movie that other people start being like, oh shit, what do we do? But nobody else is, and Nancy, my queen, is out here like, guess what? I'm gonna read a book about booby traps.
Oh, I
Oh,
forgot about that part.
I
She's
love
got
it
some
so much.
MacGyver, like MacGyver, Inspector Gadget shit going down. Also, just really quickly, what if she did go to sleep every night clutching a fedora, though? Like, what if like that was her stuffed animal? You're like, oh, that's just her sleep fedora. Anyway, sorry, continue.
But an issue that I have with this movie is it is obviously filmed in LA. Like it is.
Oh
so
my god! You're gonna go to the
clearly
Venice
filmed.
canals. You're gonna try and tell me this is Ohio? I don't think so.
Ohio?
You're gonna show
There's
my
palm
house
trees.
and say
talk
that it's
about-
in Ohio.
Okay, here's the thing. This movie, when they originally made it, they planned for it to be set in Los Angeles, and they were very clear about that with the dialogue. And then I guess some of it got cut to leave it ambiguous, so it had a more wide appeal, a general appeal, and then only later on were they like, actually, let's set it somewhere specific. And instead of just letting us Californians have this one, they were like, no, Ohio gets it. Why Ohio? That's not fair. But also, this movie cannot be divorced from being a California movie, not just because it is so recognizably California with like palm trees and the Venice canals, but also like Ohio, to my knowledge, doesn't really have earthquakes. And there's a whole line in the beginning where Tina is like, maybe this, they say things get really weird before an earthquake. Like maybe that's what's happening. Like maybe that's what these dreams are. And I just feel like this is a California movie and I claim it and nobody can take it from me.
Okay, but even though this movie is clearly a Los Angeles movie and not a fucking Ohio movie, and you want to know what solidifies that for me?
Yes.
Is that our girl Nancy, who, by the way, this is week number 2 of us having a main girl with the last name Thompson, and I just want to point out that Thompson women are superior.
Final
Beautiful,
girls.
iconic.
Final girl shit. But this is an LA movie because our girl Nancy keeps a second coffee pot under her bed. And if that's not the most LA thing, I don't know what is.
Taking caffeine pills is LA, actually. And Monica can attest.
I can attest. As a born and bred fucking Valley girl, which is the most LA thing that you can be, I did have a brief caffeine pill addiction, but I've moved.
And you've talked about it before.
I know. And I'll talk about it again, because it was a dark period in my life, and also it's when Sydney and I became BFFs, so it was a formative period.
But Monica, you were just emulating this movie, and
I just decided to take LA to the dome with a literal capsule of it, and it worked really well.
But also, there's like one point in the movie where Glenn asks Nancy, like, how long have you been awake? And she's like, 7 days, but the longest is 11. And I'm just like, girl,
Babe.
You would not be this okay.
Babe,
if
you'd be
you've been
fully
awake.
Yes, you'd be hallucinating for sure by this point.
100%.
Yeah.
Who's to say
Like,
she
there's
isn't?
No way.
That's a good point. And she even says that. She's like, maybe I am just crazy. I don't think so. But you can prove me wrong, Glenn. If only you fucking stay awake until midnight and then come meet me so I can enact my brilliant plan that she's been studying her booby trap book for.
Pop a
Okay, but
fucking
this is
pill,
where-
Glenn. Do
Glenn,
the
everybody
LA
else is
thing.
taking caffeine pills. How about you? Why not you?
God.
But this is where we get Glenn's his second good line of the entire movie. And he goes, you're nutty as a fruitcake, but I love you anyways. And I'm like, if a man doesn't come at me with that kind of energy, I don't want it.
That's the bar.
That's the bar for me. Like, you gotta know what you're getting yourself into. Some
I mean,
final
and that's
girl
big
shit, okay?
to say that also. To say that you love her even though she's somewhat like fruitcake, because fruitcake is fucking disgusting. So.
Fruitcake is very bad. And also lots of fruit in it.
So it's healthy.
I meant to say nuts.
I was like, I don't know what you're going for there,
It's like,
but
it's
good.
I like fruit. I can't speak for everybody else here. But...
I'm a big fruit
I
girl.
meant to say nuts. Okay, but this, like, after they have their whole interaction, we get Glenn in his room, which I will say is a great teen room. It is decorated so cool.
I thought all the bedrooms were great in this movie.
It looks as though Glenn has a stuffed animal of a vulture as well.
That was mentioned on the IMDb trivia. You saw right.
And that's something that I like for him. That actually makes me like him a lot more. That's a lot of character building in one stuffed animal. Why? Did he go to camp? Does he love birds? Is he a birder in his free time? Finally, I'm asking questions about him because I guess I care a little bit more now.
But this is also where we get his iconic sweatpant crop top look.
Mm-hmm.
And I love the fact that he is laying on his bed with his headphones on with a tiny TV. He's like listening to the radio.
I do feel
on his headphones.
Watching
and
that scene, I was like, he is doing so many loud things at once. Maybe we should give him some credit for trying to stay awake.
He's laying down, though. If you lay down,
Yeah,
as someone who was narcoleptic and is now a functional narcoleptic, if I become even slightly reclined, I've had one sip of a beer and it's all over. If I become slightly reclined, it's game over. If it's past 9 p.m. and I'm slightly reclined, it's over. So
game over.
He should have known. That's the first rule of staying up late. Also, I do want to say that this entire time that we've been recording, I've had the IMDb page up, and that's because the still of the trailer is the first thing on the screen, and it's him in the crop top and the sweatpants.
Oh, yeah.
With his little happy trail. And it's really inspiring.
But so, one thing that I love, and if you kind of blink and you miss it, Nancy's always like, it's right before, because Nancy was like, you have to meet me at midnight, like, come over at midnight, and it's right before Glenn gets got, and the radio that he's listening to says it's midnight, and you're listening to station KRGR, and we're about to go off air. And then that's when right after that, Freddie's hands come up from the bed and they pull him in. And I work in radio, and so the call letters are Kruger, basically.
Yeah.
And I lost my shit as an absolute
so
radio nerd.
Good. Damn, I totally missed that.
And it's like kind of like if you're not paying attention, it was like a quick little, and I lost my shit when that happened. But this is another reason I lost my shit was we get a blood fountain.
Yes.
Finally.
The geyser I mentioned earlier, beautiful, impeccable, spectacular.
Finally, a blood geyser. We've been asking for it. And actually it's existed since 1984.
I have a question, and I want to know, was this Glenn's dream? Was he like dreaming these kind of stuff and then it got him? Or do we not see because it's not real life yet, so obviously he's fallen asleep, know what I mean?
Like Nancy hasn't pulled him out of the dream world into the real world yet.
Yeah, and so like when was Glenn dreaming that he was having that conversation with his mom earlier? Like, was that a dream? Like,
I think
was his conversation with Nancy a dream? Like that, where it like blurs that line? When did Glenn fall asleep?
I think
because we don't see Freddie go after Glenn, he just comes up and gets him, so it has to be a dream.
Or it's like Nancy's dream earlier when she watched Freddie get rod, you know what I mean? Like, Nancy is asleep. I think the reality is, like, we're seeing the reality, but I also think we're, like, seeing it through Nancy's dream lens, where you can see Freddie actually acting. With Tina earlier, and how Rod described it when he is talking to, when he's talking to Nancy, when he's in jail, is he couldn't see Freddie when he ripped the sheet off Tina. He could just see the cuts appearing all at once. So I think the fact that we can see Freddie is to say that we're seeing it through the lens of Nancy's dream. We're not seeing like reality necessarily. But
why don't you think
it's
his dream? I don't think it's Glenn's dream.
Because I think we would see it through Glenn's perspective then. Glenn is asleep like the whole time.
Yeah, but in the other scenes where it's
but that's where it kind of like
the way it's
shot.
shot.
Come to Glenn's dream before, as far as we know.
But in Tina's dreams, it's not like it's first person video camera where you're like watching everything through Tina's eyes, you know? So it could
Tina's
very
awake.
well be. She's asleep.
But maybe Glenn is just dreaming that he's asleep because Glenn is useless.
Even in Glenn's dreams, he's asleep doing literally
Even in
nothing.
Glenn's dreams, he's asleep.
I don't know. I think it's complicated because it is one of those things where it's like Rod was asleep when Freddy got him, but we saw it through Nancy's dream. We know Nancy was dreaming at that point. So whatever Rod was dreaming, we didn't see it. We don't know if that Rod was just dreaming that he was asleep or if that was just Rod asleep. You know what I mean?
I disagree because in that part, there's a part we didn't mention. She sees, like, Freddy trying to start killing Rod, and then she gets distracted right after because she hears someone whispering her name, and it's dead Tina, and then a big lizard, not a lizard, a big centipede comes out of her mouth, and then she dissolves into a bunch of muddy snakes, which is a part that is very exciting. And then I think she, like, goes back to, like, wake herself up so she can go in person to go, like, in the real world where she's conscious to go get him. And so then she's already awake at that point, and then we see Freddy killing Rod, so that has to be Rod's dream. Ja feel? Because she's awake at that point because she's literally at the police station saying, let me in, let me in.
I don't remember the exact sequence of the movie well enough, but if I pull up my notes, I'm sure I will find that you're right.
Because he dies literally, like, seconds before they get through the door. Like, he gets, like, they pull him up by the sheets.
Does he, though? Because I think that's one of those, like, movie timeline things. It seems like he's, like, good and dead when we finally get to him, even though they've been cutting in between.
Yeah, but either way, she's already awake and already over there. I don't know. I think it's his dream. But either way, the geyser of blood. In the reality, that's the thing that's so horrifying too about that kill, because Glenn gets pulled into the bed, right? And then an explosion of blood goes everywhere. And then the police come once everyone's, like, awake again. And there's just blood everywhere, but there's no fucking body. Like, what do they think happened?
Right? Like, and that's something that I want to know. Because there's no body, and we see him get sucked into the bed. So, like,
is his body embedded in the mattress?
Is the body embedded in his mattress? Like, where is it? We do see, remember when Nancy goes back and she's looking for Freddy in the dream world? We see Glenn's headphones in the dream world.
That's true.
And so I'm like, that's another reason where I was like, did Freddy come out in, like, real life and, like, grab this person and, like, drag him in? I don't see how that would be possible.
But here's the thing. How is it possible that Nancy stole his fedora right off his head and pulled it into the real world? Maybe it can go both ways.
Too complicated. But also,
we would probably have to watch every other movie in this universe to really get into the lore of how do the dreams work exactly. I don't think we're meant to be having
that.
Yeah, I think if there was, like, a really clear explanation for who is dreaming and when, and you had a really strong sense of it in this movie, it would be less scary than it is. I think it's intentionally ambiguous.
I like that about it.
That brings it to the end, you know what I mean? And there's a much larger discussion in general to be had about the end, because the very end of this movie wasn't what the original end was supposed to be. And they did a couple different rewrites, and they shot a couple different versions before they, like, picked the final version.
Mm-hmm. But I think we should talk about a scene that Chelsea loves very much. And that is Nancy not going home alone, because Home Alone is a clear reference to this movie.
Oh, yes. Home Alone clearly wanted what Nancy had, because Nancy studied the art of warfare. Nancy did her research. You know, Kevin, I mean, it's great. Kevin has some kind of innate skill, but Nancy did the work. You know what I mean? She did her homework, because we saw her earlier in the movie in the Venice canals reading this book, and that was one of my favorite quotes actually in this movie, because Glenn says, "Booby traps and improvised anti-personal devices? Well, what are you reading that for?" And she says, "I'm into survival." And I was like, yes, Nancy!
I know, girl.
Nancy.
I just loved that for her. And then she really gets into it because she comes up with this plan and she wanted to put it in action earlier, I think, when she asked Glenn to meet up with her at midnight, and then Glenn, stupid bitch, fell asleep. Love him, cute in a crop top, useless. But so she's like, okay, I'm still gonna try, and she's especially committed now that her boyfriend and her best friend and Rod are all gone. But she comes up with a plan. And she tries to get her dad on board, basically, and he also useless. By the way,
Real quick.
uh-huh.
Her dad is useless. Also, weirdest hair in the game. Absolutely the most strange hairstyle I've ever seen. It's like all the way around comb over. It comes completely from the back of his head and it seamlessly swoops around the entire head in an unnatural formation. And it's something that should be studied. But continue with what you were saying.
Yes, but so she outlines her plan to Glenn, and her plan essentially is that she's going to go into her dream. She's going to grab Freddie. She's going to have Glenn wake her up when it seems like she's having a bad dream, i.e. when she starts struggling with Freddie in her dream. And then because she'll be holding on to him, she'll bring him into the real world like she brought his hat into the real world, and then Glenn would smash him with the baseball bat. Like, that was her idea.
Genius.
And she's like, I'll just improvise a little bit. I will buy myself some time by setting up all of these booby traps so that if things don't go precisely as planned, she's not going to have her dad watching over her because he's across the street at Glenn's house investigating Glenn's mysterious death and putting drippy blood buckets on the first floor for all the blood leaching through from the second floor. But so instead she tells him, I'm going to go and get the guy who did it, and I want you to be there to arrest him when I bring him out, okay? Fred Krueger did it, Dad, and only I can get him. Interesting. She says, it's my nightmare he comes to. So that is worth theorizing on further, but I also feel like we're not going to have a clear consensus, so I don't want to go back to that discussion. But interesting point. She says, it's my nightmare he comes to. Just come here and break the door down in exactly 20 minutes. Can you do that? That'll be exactly midnight. Time enough for me to fall asleep and find him. Which is interesting because what she really does is she uses 10 minutes to set up booby traps. And she accomplishes a lot. She's like fully prepared for those 10 minutes. She gets so much done.
You got the sledgehammer. That one was very impressive.
And then I was also like, babe, don't you think you are maybe cutting it a little close, only giving yourself 10 minutes to fall asleep and find Freddie? But I was also like, she has been awake for 7 days, so presumably the second that she lies down, she will be unconscious. And fair enough.
But like, she literally was drinking coffee and took a caffeine pill.
She
like
took just a little
hour
bit of
ago.
speed.
Yeah, seriously.
I was like, there's no way you're falling asleep right now, Nancy.
Mm-hmm. But she has been awake for 7 days, I guess. So, I guess on some level the power of sleep's gonna win out eventually. Or you will simply die. I mean, one or the other. But she has this plan, and she's like, she tells her dad, break the door down in exactly 20 minutes. Can you do that? It's time enough for me to fall asleep and find him. You'll be here to catch him, right? And he's like, yeah, sure, whatever, blah, blah, blah. He agrees. But so she sets up this plan, and it would potentially go very wrong, because what if he found her like 1 minute in? You know what I mean? And even if her dad was following her plan to the letter and he doesn't come for another 9 minutes after that, it's like, you're really relying on the strength of your booby traps here. And you're also really relying on the fact that you'll be able to wake up. But she sets alarms for herself. You know what I mean? She's thought this through. And it works. And she brings Freddie into the real world. And she chases him down to the basement and lights him on fire. After smashing him with a sledgehammer. And I was like, again, I know you only had 10 minutes to set up these plans, but also what if he had been smashed in the face with a sledgehammer instead of the stomach? You know what I mean? I kind of feel like maybe that would have been more effective, but also maybe she would have had to cut the handle so that it would not be so tall.
There was just no time in there was no budgeted time for sawing off a handle, you know?
Sure.
So,
Yeah.
she started some internal bleeding instead.
One thing that I do love about
Mm-hmm.
when Freddy comes into the real world is all of Nancy's booby traps are kicking his ass.
Yes.
Like, he always had, like, the advantage in the dream world, but he gets pulled in, and everything that she's set has, like, set him back. Like,
Yeah.
Suddenly he has to play on a level playing field.
Yes,
And she's prepared, and he's not.
Amazing to watch.
He's like, bitch, you're in my world now. And she's winning.
Welcome back.
Welcome to reality, Freddy.
It's truly iconic, though, because he has been pulling dirty tricks this whole time in the dream world, where he's like, uh-oh, I can cut off my fingers, and it means nothing. Uh-oh, I can speak to you over the phone. Suddenly, I am part of the phone. I lick you on the mouth, and I'm gonna come kill you in 1 second. First of all, I hated that. Absolutely no.
Oh, yeah, the tongue phone is not my
right
thing.
now, Nancy.
Yes, ew, stop it. But so, he's not playing fair. Suddenly, Nancy has the ability to not play fair either. And it is iconic and it is amazing. But also then she has lit somebody in fire in her house where there are bars on all of the windows and the door is locked and she doesn't have a way to get out, and she's trapped herself with a monster and in a house that is going to burn down if they're not careful. You know what I mean? And she just starts like smashing all of the windows and stuff. Eventually they get to her, but also Freddy's no longer downstairs. Freddy has escaped into the rest of the house, and as it turns out, maybe Nancy wasn't his only target. Because he goes upstairs and he goes to Marge's room, and Nancy's dad gets there almost in time, not quite in time, but Nancy's dad, again, useless, dumb, stupid, hate him, not very good at his job, and all he thinks to do is put out the fire, and all that does is Freddy disappears back to the dreamland, presumably, and then Marge's body is just like this weird mummified, burnt out, desiccated corpse that disappears into a clean sheet underneath.
But that scene is so good.
He slowly lowers with a gorgeous blue aura around her into a smoky hole in the bed.
Yes.
And then
she's like a skeleton.
Yes.
She's a skeleton.
And
her hand is like pointed out.
Now do you believe me? And in my notes, I was just like, babe, I'm just not sure he does. Like, I still think the answer is no, even with what he just saw with his own eyes. But then Nancy has a backup plan based on her earlier booby traps and dreams conversation with Glenn, where he had told her that in some other culture, a Balinese culture, maybe? Is that right? Is that what my brain? I don't know. I think that's what he says, but don't quote me on it. Did I write it down?
I've got no idea.
I have no idea.
Bali does not exist in my notes. Power. Did I take the word power? No, I didn't write the quote down. Anyway, Glenn has told her about this other culture where they believe that if you turn your back on a monster in a dream, it drains the monster of its power.
That's fancy.
Yeah, so he has told her this, and she's like, well, you know what, I've tried just about everything else. And she comes up with this idea that if she is able to take Freddy's power away, she can fix everything. Because, now she's her best friend, her mom, her boyfriend, her best friend's boyfriend. It's like everything. And also she has this gray streak in her hair now. And she looked in a mirror. She thought she looked ancient. She was like, I look 20. Like, anybody's nightmare, apparently.
Go fuck yourself, Nancy.
Truly rude.
Shut the fuck up, Nancy.
But she comes up with this idea, and she's like, if I just take his power back from him, everything will go back to normal. I'll defeat him, and I'll somehow have been able to undo this, like, larger nightmare, if you will. And she
Ooh.
does it, you know what I mean? She does it. She wakes up, she realizes she's just going about her day. Her mom's there. She goes outside. She meets Tina and Glenn and Rod, because Tina and Rod also, their romantic issues have been solved. And they just all hop in the car together, and you're like, wow, they did it. And then
Hooray!
maybe not so much, because an arm like breaks out of the front door window, pulls Marge back through the window of the door.
Wait,
No, before that,
they're in that beautiful red convertible, and the pop top pops up of its own accord, and you realize the color of the pop top is the same color as Freddie's sweater.
Yeah. She says, I believe anything is possible. And I was like, yay! And also, Marge was also like, I don't think I'm gonna drink anymore. And I was like, wow, she even fixed her mom's alcoholism. And then you're right, the cover pops up, and I wrote in my notes, no, it's red and green, it's locking them in. And then they're like, Rob, let us out, and he can't open the doors. And you're right, that's when the arm comes through. But what's really interesting about this scene is Wes Craven didn't want to include it. He wanted it to just end with Nancy having defeated Freddie and having a happy, hopeful ending. And it was only one of the other producers who was like, no, let's leave it ambiguous so that we can do sequels. And they also filmed some other. Yes, they filmed some
like,
other.
Let's make it a feel-good film at the end. Very unexpected from Wes Craven, but good.
I watched
he was
the
young
other endings because on mine
it
had like
oh my gosh, yes. Okay, tell me more, because IMDb trivia said that they filmed 2 like compromise in between scenes, and one of them they drive off and nothing happens with the convertible, but Marge does get like yoinked through the drawer. Do you know what the other one is?
Yes. I don't remember. I think the other one of them was the scene that they used.
Mm-hmm.
The other one was they drove off, but Marge got yoinked in. And I can double check, but I don't remember what the other one. But they were all like, the ending doesn't really do anything for me.
Really?
Like, I thought the ending was kind of disappointing.
It was a little silly, but I do love the pop top.
Here's the thing. The only thing that did it for me was when Marge gets yanked, you can clearly see that it is a mannequin.
Yes. I said I'd never seen this movie, and that was true. But when I saw that scene, I remembered that I'd seen a GIF set on Tumblr, just like looking at horror GIF sets, and it was like so clearly a mannequin in the GIF set, because it's just that one moment played over and over again. You know what I mean? And so I remembered that when I saw this scene, and I was like, oh, that's funny. But I actually really like the ending, because I think it goes to so much of what's scary about this movie, which is like it's hard to distinguish dream from reality. And that's something that I think is scary, not just within the context of this movie, but plays into that larger fear of when you're having a dream. It's hard to distinguish dream from reality. It's hard to break it down sometimes, and it leads to your own dreams being scarier after having seen this movie. You know what I mean?
Totally.
And I think sorry, go ahead.
I also think that it also touches on, like, sometimes you have a dream that's so good and it feels so real, and you're like, oh God, everything is great and everything's wonderful, and then you wake up from that dream and you're in reality. And so this is like kind of a twist on that. It still turns into a nightmare at the end, but like she dreamed that everything was perfect, and then the reality sets in. Oh.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things, if they had never made sequels, you could have interpreted it either way. You know what I mean? It could have been that Nancy won, but she's haunted by this experience. It could have been that Nancy thought she won, but things are trickier than they seem. It could have been that Nancy was fully deluding herself to think that she could ever stand a chance against Freddie. I totally see the value in defeating the evil, you know what I mean, and having a hopeful ending where you want to see the final girl or whoever win, and it is so rare that they don't, you know what I mean. So I think in some ways it's a really fun, surprising twist to be like, she did win, but did she? But I also think it's interesting because they're like, well, we need to leave it open for a sequel. But Wes Craven, in all of the Scream movies, you know what I mean? Every single time they figure out who Ghostface is, they stop Ghostface. It's just someone new is Ghostface every single time.
Yeah. There's always a way to make more money. Don't worry, Wes.
You could do that with this. You could have Freddy get defeated, but then be like, but now you've unlocked the dream world or whatever. But then you wouldn't get to have Freddy anymore. And he
makes it
insane. You know what I mean? He's wild.
I want to see what those long arms can do in the sequel.
Here's the thing. For somebody that is only on film in this movie for 7 whole minutes.
Which is crazy.
That's insane.
Freddy is the star.
He's the star of the show. He's the one character who I like enough that I want to see him again. So, there you go.
He's the only one that I care about in all of the sequels.
Yep. That's it. But yeah, I guess it's time to get into our segments. So, what one do we usually start with? Oh, of course, the classic. Could this have been gayer?
Yes, it could have been. And I'll tell you one note that I made, which is when Tina, during her death scene, when she was like writhing around the bed and she was getting attacked by Freddy, she called out first for Nancy before anybody else, but for her boyfriend Rod, who was in the room with her, before Glenn, who was downstairs, before any adult in her life who obviously were not present, but she called out for Nancy first. And I was like, that is so gay.
Very gay. I would have loved that because I didn't need Glenn to be in it at all. But maybe Glenn, I also get a little bit of gay vibes from him too. But they don't give us enough personality for me to really feel it all the way through. But I feel like there could be something there.
There's a moment before Rod shows up at Tina's house in the beginning when they hear a noise and Glenn goes to investigate and Tina and Nancy are like right beside him holding on to each other and also holding on to him. To me, that's throuple vibes, and polyamory is not inherently queer, but also I think maybe it is.
I could see Glenn. He would have been Mr. I'm super straight in high school, but then he would have joined a frat in college and then would have definitely done a bunch of homoerotic stuff in college with his frat bros. You cannot change my mind on that one.
I feel that deeply.
I feel that deep in my soul for Glenn. And honestly, that makes him a little bit more interesting to me.
Thank you for giving him some depth at all, besides just the vulture stuffed animal. We needed a little bit more.
I try, I'm here for this. Matthew Lillard. I think he would have been a great Rod.
Yeah,
I think that's the natural
same
fit
character.
For him.
I mean, not exactly the same character. Rod is a little bit more naturally sexy than my sexy king Matthew Lillard is, but if he just got an earring, that all would be changed. And maybe a lash lift.
Matthew Lillard.
Because Rod's got those lashes that won't quit, and I love that about him.
I love men with beautiful eyelashes. It is unfair, but God, I love looking at them.
Oh, yeah, one of my best friends, Julian, he has gorgeous full lashes, and I'm just like, give them to me. You are not using them. But honestly, he looks beautiful, so he is using them, and I can't take those away. Okay. I feel like that's the place for Matthew, so we gotta move on to our next segment. It's just that this goes without saying, but who is the dumb bitch of this film? Many people are dumb, I will say that, but it's fucking Glenn for me, man.
Yeah. Because the thing is, the dad is a dumb bitch, but he is so uninvolved in the real plot of this movie for so long that it's hard to give it to him. Marge is kind of being a dumb bitch by refusing to listen to her daughter or consider what could be real, even though she's got the hat in front of her eyes and in her hands. But also she had to murder somebody after potentially her child was killed, you know, so I'm going to give her a pass. Glenn is really the only one who has no excuse and who is at every time being like, you guys are being so dramatic. When I have a dream that's bad, I just tell myself, hey, this is a dream, and then I wake up. Why can't you guys do that? Like, he just, he's not having anything helpful here other than his crop top.
And he's given so many chances to redeem himself. Okay, 2. But there are 2 times where he could do anything helpful, and he fucks up the same way twice. Bye, Glenn. I'm glad you turned into a geyser of flesh and blood.
You're useful then. I was gonna say Marge, but before I knew the not canon backstory of it, and then I was like, okay, Marge makes more sense as a character to me. But without knowing that, I was like, Marge, baby, like,
what's going on?
Marge,
what's going on
my
here?
girl, you know who Fred Krueger is. You know that Nancy did not find this name out some other way, because this is, like, apparently this town's dirty little secret that they murdered a man, which is insane. But you, like,
Mama,
everything is happening before your eyes. You're just not ready to confront it. And that's unfortunately dumb bitch behavior. But also, honestly, for me, the fact that she murdered somebody and has turned to alcoholism to deal with that is a little bit like, I understand why you don't trust what you're seeing, and I understand why you are not trusting your view of reality, because you are purposely distorting your view of reality so that you can make it through each day.
Yeah, I also feel like, you know, since she literally pulled the trigger, you know, in this non-canon backstory, she can't believe, like, she's like, I killed him, and every day I live with his ghost. He can't be back. You know what I mean?
He can't be back.
Refuses to believe it. Very dark, very dark. There's a lot of dark shit in this movie. Wow.
Oh, yeah.
They should have kept that scene in. It would have made it. I think it would have given the movie more.
Yeah.
Oomph.
Totally. And made it
Maybe they did
less
it in the
silly.
reboot. I don't know.
Well, they did keep him a child molester in the reboot, so it's definitely possible that some of the things that got cut, Wes Craven was able to be like, consider that it was a good idea the first time around.
One of our very trusty new followers who I trust with my life told me that New Nightmare is trash, so I trust them.
Bummer. I do
them.
think, though, in terms of Glenn being the dumb bitch, there is one line, one quote that puts it all together, and this is after Glenn falls asleep the first time, and Nancy says, Glenn, you bastard, and he says, what did I do? And she says, I asked you to do one thing, just stay awake and watch me. Just wake me up if it looked like I was having a bad dream, and what did you do, you shit? You fell asleep. And I was just like, for me, that was it. That moment, that was, and game over on the Dumb Bitch Award. It was awarded.
It's good.
Get him, Nancy.
Mm-hmm.
So finally, we have to do our knives out of 5s here. And so who wants to go first? Who's feeling strong? Who's decided?
I'll go. I fucking love this movie. It is so good. I watched it 3 times this past week because I like it. I hadn't watched it in a while. So I'm gonna give it a 4.5 out of 5.
Ooh, that's pretty high for you.
I love this movie.
Strong.
It's, you know me, I love the old movies. This is a genre king classic. And it's so good, even though some of the acting is not great, especially with Nancy and her mom. All of those scenes are kind of cringe, but I have such a good time, even if you're just like making fun of it. It's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree with you. Like, I watched this movie the second time around. The first time around, I remember being, like, blown away, because not by, like, how absolutely incredible it is, but how, like, preposterous and crazy and insane it is. And it wasn't what I really expected it was going to be. Like I said earlier, I'm used to those stoic kings who stab you with a knife, but Freddy's got pizzazz, and I love a man with pizzazz. But that said, like, watching it again, I was like, God, everybody sucks at acting in this movie. I was like, it didn't, like, the parts that weren't the 7 minutes with Freddy didn't grab my interest or my attention as much as they did the first time around. But that said, there are so many little details, and having this conversation with you guys reminded me of so many of them that made me like it a lot more than I did on Monday. I think I was thrown by seeing my house on the screen that was in my house, and I live in my house. My house was in the movie, but the movie was on my screen that was in my house. If you catch what I'm saying.
In the TV in the house.
Am I in the TV? I thought, is the TV me? Where's Freddy? It was very confusing. I'm still not sure what happened. That said, I think this is a really fucking awesome movie, and I can't wait to watch. Like, this movie just made me want to watch the rest of them. Maybe not all of them, because there's 27 of them, as I said earlier. Or at least 8. There are 8 of them. No, 9, I think, because you said there's 6 sequels and 2 remakes. And then there's the original.
Sequels.
And then the Jason vs. Freddy.
And Jesus Christ. Oh. One day I'll get to Jason versus Freddy. I don't know how that's
Jason versus
go down.
Freddy is the first Freddy and Jason movie that I ever watched when it came out. I was like 12. I hadn't seen the originals yet, and I watched that one.
Oh, that's a remake one?
It's, yeah, like, it came out in 2003.
I'm lost in the lore.
Like, I had no idea what was going on, but I couldn't sleep for a really long time. Like, that movie fucked me up.
I'll let you know that I
haven't watched it since. I only watched it that one time, and so now I'm like, okay.
I had a very similar experience with Alien versus Predator 7. I, like, snuck into... I got to a movie early with my dad, so we just walked into Alien vs. Predator 7 to just watch part of it, and they happened to be playing out a scene that was very similar to a traumatizing Don't Look Under the Bed episode that I saw as a kid. Or, yeah.
Don't Look Under the Bed was a DCOM.
No, not that. What's it called?
Oh.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah!
What is it? Say it.
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yes, I walked in and watched the scene that was exactly like this traumatizing scene I had seen from Are You Afraid of the Dark. It was literally the exact same thing except with fucking Predator in it. And I had an existential crisis and I had to leave. So I feel you. But back to my rating. I can't wait to see what happens next with the rest of this. I love the world building that they set up in this movie, and I love all this stupid, crazy bullshit. Wes Craven, you maniac. I adore you. So I will give this one a 4.3 because the acting was not there, and Johnny Depp let me down, except his body's beautiful, and, you know, he continues to let me down, but he started out real early in his career, I guess. But yeah, I still think it's a really, really, really good movie, and I changed my score. It's 4.33333 repeating because I realized I gave it a normal score rating, and that's not what I do. Chelsea, what do you think? That's not what I'm about.
Okay, I should have interrupted sooner to give the rating backstory, if you will, the rating context that I like to do, but I'll do it now. This movie got a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, and on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie got 94% fresh from critics, which is so high, and it got
so high.
84% fresh from audiences. I also said Sydney's 4.5 is very high, but then I went back and looked at Sydney's scores in my log, and Sydney can be harsh sometimes with movies that I like. Love, but with movies that Sydney loves, she'll give 5s and she'll give 4.5s. So this is just one of her movies. But I really, really liked it, and I like I said, I'd never seen it before. But I was really engaged with it. I thought it was really fun. I thought it raised a lot of, like, questions about the world, but not in a way where sometimes I get mad that things don't make sense. I think it was in a way that like prompted discussion for me, and wanting to like go back and watch it again and like see what was going on. And I haven't taken the chance to do that yet, so who knows if it will potentially not quite stand up to that muster on a second watch. But on a first watch alone, to me, it was so strong. I would probably give it like a 4.7.
Damn.
Hell yeah.
I really,
It
really
was
liked
stronger
it. I
than
felt like
Sydney's score, and this is
Yeah.
Sydney's movie. Wow.
I felt like stupid that I had never taken the time to watch this before. I thought it was great. That
I'm
said,
so
I love this dumb movie.
yeah. That said, next week we are moving on to a potentially very terrible movie. I have not watched it since I saw it in theaters in what probably was
Same.
like the 10th grade.
Yep, that was the year.
Yeah. But we are watching Prom Night with Brittany Snow. We're throwing it back. I think it is a reboot, so again, it has a lot of potential to be terrible, but it is prom season, baby. So
Yeah.
we're gonna get in the spirit of things with Prom Night.
I'm excited to see just how bad it is.
I think
but I
probably pretty bad, but I was scared. I remember being scared.
remember being scared too, but that doesn't say jack shit because like 10th grade Monica could not handle a damn thing. So
Sydney, have you
Does-
seen it?
I don't know if I've seen it or not.
Ooh, okay.
we'll
Potentially-
essentially all be seeing it for the first time because I can't remember movies that I saw like 2 months ago, let alone
Mhm.
something I saw freaking 15 years ago. It has to be really good to stick in my mind. 15, I aged myself so greatly. 12 years ago. Let's take it back a second. Anyway, thanks for listening. If you liked what you heard, why not give us a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts? Why not compliment the sweet, sultry sound of my voice? The fun facts that Chelsea throws out. Just anything, everything about Sydney. There's so much to compliment, and we would love to hear it. Also, want to say that we want to welcome all of our new followers. We just hit 550 followers, so thank y'all so much for joining the crew. If you haven't joined yet, follow us at spooky_Tuesday. That's on Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, soon to be Pinterest. And if you're still on Facebook, follow us at
Tumblr.
and Tumblr. Is the Tumblr one Spooky Tuesday Pod too?
Yes, it is.
All right, Facebook and Tumblr, Spooky Tuesday Pod. Thanks for listening.
Bye, Spookies.
Spooky Tuesday was created by Monica Height, Sydney Thompson, and Chelsea Duff, and edited by Sydney Thompson. Our gorgeously spooky tunes are all thanks to Tamara Simons, who you can follow on Instagram at Captain Tamara, and our podcast art is by Mary Murphy, who you can find on Instagram at the_moon_OMG.
Two friends coming for